What's happening? It's your bro King Blitz checking in one time for the one time. I'm here with my wife.
Queen B, y'all already know who I am. Let's go.
Yes, sir. And today we are here to discuss the Elvis Presley movie.
Yes.
We went to go see it yesterday. We wanted to do a reaction to it yesterday, but ended up getting wrapped up in some other stuff that prevented that from happening. But I'll let you go first. What are your first impressions of the movie?
Well, first I want to give a shout out to the Elvis fandom because, by them just giving history in the comment sections as I've been on this Elvis journey, it kind of helped me, follow along with the movie. Like, my favorite part was beginning with the time frame stamps of, what was happening then,
The time stamps?
Yeah, the actual years of history of Elvis. So that kind of caught my attention.
No, that was very necessary. I mean, because Elvis, he went through eras, and the movie also made me realize how short of a lifespan he really did. He started in 1956 or 54, one of those, and he passed away in 1977. Right. So that's like 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But in the beginning for me, I thought it was pretty chaotic in terms of them how they was relaying the story, just because it was. Obviously, they had to try to fit as much information as they possibly can to bring us up to speed to the current situation that they, were in. So for me, I kind of got, because I knew a lot of Elvis's history by doing these reactions and things of that nature, it made it a lot easier for me to follow along. But had I not known that, I would have been in there like,
That's what I was going to say. Somebody who's their first time being introduced to Elvis will probably be like a little confused with the time, going up like, okay, what's going on? But because, like you said, people who have history, we can kind of follow along better with the movie. Yeah,
so I will say that, I have this understood idea about the Colonel, and there's certain relationships that I didn't know that were as prominent, like the B.B. King relationship. Mm-hmm. So long story short, the movie starts off with, Elvis starts off with the Colonel seeing Elvis getting ready to do his first performance in the pink suit. What I don't know, I forgot who he was singing it for. I know it wasn't Ed Sullivan, but anyway, he was getting ready to, when Elvis became Elvis. Elvis the pelvis. I know that they hated that. He was so mad about that. Yeah, he was so upset about that. But yeah, it started off with the Colonel, discovering Elvis, and then it went back into his childhood.
Right. Yep.
It went back into his childhood, started talking about how he ended up getting introduced to black music, the church, and how he ended up in the community that he was in. His father ended up going to jail. I didn't know that his father went to jail. Ended up going to jail, and they ended up, having to move into what's considered a rural area. What was you finna say though?
Oh no, I was just relating to about the father with the forced check. That's when he ended up, pretty much going to prison, and that's when Elvis and his mother got extremely close. They were already close, but that's when they really got close. Around that time is when his father got locked up and things like that. Yeah,
and that's something that I didn't know. I didn't know that Elvis' father ended up getting locked up for that. But I don't know, man. Elvis was a lot. He was very conflicted, especially in the beginning, because his mom, as things were beginning to take off for Elvis, after the Colonel introduced himself and convinced him that, after the Colonel convinced Elvis that he would be the guy to help propel his career. Yeah. When he brought the information back to his mom, she ended up getting very, very worried. She thought she was gonna lose him.
Yeah, because they real close, and like Elvis said it himself too. That was his girl and things like that. So of course, and she already lost her twin son. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
It's because of that the anxiety for him went through the roof, because she had lost her son. It was a stillborn. He had a twin that was a stillborn, and ever since that day, she kind of, I wouldn't say she clawed him, but you can only expect that from a parent. Me as a parent, and if I was in a situation, I would probably end up, having that same type of halo I'm putting over my child as well, trying to make sure that they stay that angel. Right. But then he ended up, his career started to once that first song dropped, he was Elvis. Soon as he went back to the spot, everybody noticing him, everybody looking at him. All that, man. Elvis, grew popularity very early on. Now, I love how the Colonel was telling Elvis, you remember that performance when he wiggled his finger?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I knew it was coming.
And I believe he sung that song. He sung that song that he sung in what's the movie we just King Creole. You know, when in King Creole, when he was talking to Maxie and he sung that song, like, you know, I ain't the one to mess with. I ain't the one you play with, yada, yada. And I think that was the same song that he performed on that stage. So he had the officers and everybody around him like, yo, you bet not, you know, so much as wiggle a finger.
I knew it was coming because Elvis was on there like, all right, I'm not moving. But when he said coming for trouble, I already knew he was about to say
bruh, he hit that stage there like this. The officer was like, he went up there and did his thing. The one thing that he did was stay true to himself. And that's one thing I can applaud, because in the midst of so many people in his ear, in the midst of all the money that's coming and all the fame, he could have easily got clouded in that and decided to go whatever the politically correct route would have been. But he chose to just stay true to his artistry. And yeah, I think it worked out for him.
So I see now the reason why he had to go to the army was because it was either that or jail.
Well, yep, exactly. That's what I was going to bring up. Yep, yeah. Because, you know, at that time, what he was doing was considered sexual acts. And people didn't, most of the, you know, adults wasn't approved. They was haters, bro. A lot of the men were haters, though.
Honestly, he really wasn't doing it. The wiggle, like...
I mean, we got to understand, we live in a different time period.
Yeah,
so everything is desensitized to us right now.
Right. But what they didn't show in the movie, you remember when Elvis did find out like his mother passed, but we didn't get to... When I read up on it, he was able to make it in time enough before his mother passed. But in the movie, of course, they don't show that. They just show him in the room, you know, crying on her clothes and things like that.
So what had happened was, after the whole cop ordeal, when he was told not to perform, you know, doing all the Elvis the Pelvis type stuff, the Colonel and the government, well, the police or whatever, came up with the idea that they needed to clean up his act. So they ended up trying to introduce the new Elvis. And they started having him do all of these different kind of like family-like things, and he just wasn't with it. And that's the reason why he initially rebelled at that concert with the wiggling of the finger. So then, I believe they proposed to him the idea of, you know, hey, you either go to jail or you go to the army. Let us clean cut you up. When you get back, you know, we'll
you know, pretty much restart, but with like a new Elvis.
Yeah, I mean, well, they was already starting that, you know, and then when he rebelled, that's why they ended up trying to push him towards that. Okay. And then when he got out, that's when he started doing his acting thing. And the Colonel ended up making him this, you know, big actor. But then you start seeing the frustrations with that, because Elvis was like, he wasn't able to get the role, the type of, he was kind of like typecast. They always wanted him to be singing. Yeah. And then he ended up getting a few roles that wasn't required of that to prove his acting skills. Right. But overall, man, you can see the Colonel had his claws all over everything. You know, Elvis wasn't so business minded, and at that time, you know, the idea was somebody does the business, somebody does the performing. But his relationship with B.B. King was very important because of that. B.B. King was the one that kept telling him like, "Yo, you got to do the business, or the business is gonna do you." You know what I'm saying? He told him. So I thought that relationship was really surprising. Then we further on, Elvis is successful. He ended up meeting Priscilla, and you really got a chance to really see how the dynamics of their relationship really worked, because she was really there to comfort him. You remember?
She was like, I don't care about the music, I don't care about, you know, the money, none of this.
Well, that was after they ended up having a baby.
Yeah, I know, but she was just pretty much like his backbone, like telling him like, you know, do it because you love to do it and things like that. So I can see why he really had a love for Priscilla.
Yeah, you know, and they was like he said, like I was saying, they was introduced at a time where it was right after he lost his mom, and he was still I think he was back in the army, and you know, she was up there visiting him and things of that nature, and boom. So then when he ended up getting out, they ended up furthering their relationship. Ended up having what's her name, Lisa Marie. But at that time, Elvis's life became super chaotic, man. It was just, he was a slave to the stage almost. And then it started to dive deeper into the Colonel's lifestyle and how he had his debts. They did a good job of, like, how do I say, villainizing the Colonel without like demonizing him. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously he had his faults. Obviously he did stuff completely wrong. Obviously he overworked Elvis. Obviously, you know, he had his secrets and his debts to pay. He wasn't even Tom Parker. Everything about him was a lie, as Elvis began to uncover.
Well, his people, the Elvis people around, began to recover because, you know, at that incident, he kept saying security when he was trying to travel, like, international stuff. He kept blaming it on, like, security and stuff, and so it made the people around Elvis like, okay, we finna dig a little deeper as to why he can't travel, you know, overseas and do these shows, why he want to keep him here.
Yeah, man, because, I mean, Elvis could have did anything, you know, but the Colonel had his hands in his pockets, and for the most part, on the outside looking in the beginning, you would think that the Colonel had his best interest. You know,
in the very beginning.
You would think, oh, okay, yeah, cool. And it very much so seemed like that up until, of course, they uncovered that he had a previous life before meeting Elvis that created this debt situation and all that. Mm-hmm. Furthering on, excuse me.
Well, while we on this subject, I wanted to ask you, so do you think, like, because I know a lot of people was kind of upset that the Colonel was saying pretty much that he made Elvis. If it wasn't for him, Elvis wouldn't be who he was. Do you really think that Elvis could have been who he is today without the Colonel?
I mean, it's yes and no, right? Because yes, because he could have been who he was, period, because he already had the God-given talent. It was just a matter of somebody discovering him to be able to give him the knowledge to help syndicate his talent. You know, because without the Colonel, Elvis already knew what songs he wanted, what type of music he wanted to make. He already had relationships with you know, bandmates. He already, you know, had a culture around what he wanted to do with his music.
A label already or something like that before?
I don't know. I think it was Sun Records.
He was with.
I don't think it was with a label. I don't know, because when the Colonel was on
or something like that, he was recording songs with someone that he was affiliated with.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know that. Because the only reason why I said it is because he was excited about getting signed to a label when they were on that Ferris wheel. Yeah. So yeah, I think that Elvis still would have been able to be successful. No, because unfortunately, the way Elvis was overworked was just very unfortunate. But the Colonel definitely had access to obvious things in the beginning that Elvis wouldn't have been able to, you know, he would have had to plateau towards. And he was able to, you know, have Elvis think in ways that maybe Elvis wouldn't have been thinking, you know, with merchandise and all that,
he was doing
all that type of stuff. And I'm not saying that Elvis wouldn't have got to that, but I'm just saying he was on all that very early. So I say yes and no. You know, I do think Elvis could have been Elvis, you know, without him. But then you had Elvis's father, you know, intertwined with everything. I didn't know Elvis's father was as instrumental in his career until watching this movie.
Yeah, because I never really heard about Elvis's father.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about his father, but I'm saying, like, I never heard him.
New to me.
Yeah, I haven't heard about him being in his day-to-day. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know he was actually one of his business managers or something like that.
I heard about his mother, but yeah, the father was new to me in the movie.
Then eventually Elvis get introduced to pills. I can't remember who introduced it to him, but Elvis was on a roll, kind of worn out a little bit, and this guy introduced Elvis to some pills, and once Elvis started taking them, in the beginning everything seemed okay. You know, obviously that's usually how it all kind of start out. Everything seemed okay in the beginning, but as the Colonel started to stress Elvis more and more and more, trying to convince Elvis that Elvis isn't thinking for himself, he's been influenced by other people, rather than realizing Elvis was his own man, and he was finding like-minded individuals to help him, you know, further his vision. We started seeing Elvis kind of go down this
spiral.
Yeah, it was pretty bad for him. It ended up he was coming out when he was outside. He was a man of the people. He was there. He's very vibrant, but when he was alone, he was alone. Especially after Priscilla left him, because she left him and took Lisa, and that's when you really seen everything just, you know, fall downhill. Elvis was cheating, you know, sinking girls through the side door. You know, he was just lost after his mom.
Yeah, that's right. I was about to say.
He was just lost.
His mother is when you know, so he was still able to maintain, but it was like after the mothers lost, it was like.
Yeah, and I do have a gripe with his father for allowing him to continue to go down that spiral. Now, it's not, of course, you know, Elvis was a grown man, you know, and I'm sure his father realized that you can't force people to do things. But as somebody who, his father being on a roll with him and watching him do this, and it seemed as if he didn't take no, I'm sure his father spoke to him at some point, but in the movie, it seemed as if, you know, he just rolled with the punches because Elvis was paying the bills.
Yeah, just like when he fell out and the Colonel came and he was pretty much like, I don't care what happens, he needs to be on the stage and singing. He looked at the daddy. And
the dad just pretty much was like, well, Doc, what can you do? Pretty much insinuating like, yo, how can we get him back on the stage?
Instead of just
and I'm sitting there like, no.
Let him go to he's exhausted. Let him go to the hospital. You know, whatever they got to do to let him rest.
Man, they really worked that, man.
Worked, yeah. And now, like when I began to react to more of the, because where was that at? Was that in Los Angeles where he was in the you know, in there having to do the contracted singing on stage and things like that for a while for like
in Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas. Now when I go back to look at those, I cherish those more because, you know, he wanted to travel around that time and things, but he was stuck there to work.
And that's crazy to know Elvis was Elvis.
Yeah.
But he couldn't. And people knew him around the world, but he never performed outside of the U.S.
Yeah.
And then a beautiful moment did come out of that situation. Even though he was trapped and performing there, Elvis, the Colonel did something that was smart. I got to give him his points on this. He decided to do a worldwide syndicated performance.
Yeah, you talk about like bringing.
He took it to TV. And that had 1.6 billion people across the world watching at once, which I think still has not been topped to this day.
Yeah, that was crazy. I did see that.
So I thought that was one of the coolest things that came out of that whole you know, problem. But yeah, Elvis was pretty much stuck he was a slave to performing there due to the Colonel's debts, and then due to the fact that the Colonel, his identity was up for question, so they didn't even know if he can travel. We don't even know if he had the legal right to travel because, I mean, he had no history. His name was a blank when the police ran it.
To me too, because now I want to dig into like, okay, why you didn't have a name before? You know what I'm saying? Like, what?
I mean, it's not. He had a name, but why did he switch it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What was going on that made you know what I'm saying, want to change your identity and everything? So.
Yeah, man. But then it you know, you seen Priscilla after they broke up. You seen her trying to but try to get Elvis to go get help. And he said he would, but unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way. And then we got to see the iconic performance. What you about to use? You about to say something?
Yeah, I was, because I wanted to take it back to when after he came back from the army. You know, he got with the guys to do that '68 special. And how he didn't want to do like Christmas songs.
That was that was years after the army.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, after the army and things like that. But I didn't know that song that he did for Martin Luther King, that Dream song, was one of the songs that put him back on the map.
Well,
around that time.
And that's another thing. He was very, very, very much so intertwined with the issues of society. And the Colonel was trying to get him, you know, you're a performer, you're not politics. But when the Colonel was trying to force him into doing these Christmas specials that Elvis wasn't with, that's when Elvis took the time to, you know, I don't know who he got with. He got with somebody that was a writer, and they wrote that, you know, If I Can Dream song in dedication to, you know, not only Martin Luther King, but everything that was going on.
Yep.
And, you know, the Colonel, he didn't like that, but after the fact, he did give Elvis his props and tell him, hey, you know what? You did that. You know what I'm saying? I was wrong. You definitely, you made the right move. And there's so many different times that Elvis was trying to detach himself from the Colonel, but the Colonel had a very, and I wouldn't even call it weird, he had a very genuine approach, which felt genuine to bring him back in. It was kind of like, it was weird because, of course, he walking there mad, but the way they interaction just became like, you know, mentor and mentee every time they was in, and it hit the heart because it's like, man, I hate this man. I want him to get away from him, but they do kind of, you know,
yeah,
they do kind of work together. Cool, you know. It was like this weird space to be in, even knowing that the Colonel was robbing him 50% of everything, bro. That's just ridiculous.
Yes. When he said that, I'll give you 50% and I'm still like broke, like what's going on? That was kind of, I was just like, man.
So then, you know, we get towards the end of the movie, and like I say, you see Elvis do that iconic performance where, you know, he was, you know, definitely overweight for what he was, you know, known to be. But you see how he was just very, very depressed, alone all the time. Didn't want nobody around him, you know what I'm saying? But he gave his all. He still gave his all in every performance. Obviously up until he put, even after he put the Colonel on Front Street, the Colonel found a way to wrap him right back up.
He did.
He found a way to wrap him right back up. You know, Elvis ended up being broke.
Yeah, and that performance at the end, I had reacted to it like a while ago.
Me too.
But I didn't know until, like, you know, the family came in and told me that was like one of his last songs before his passing.
Yeah.
And things like that. And I was like, oh, wow, because, like, he performed it so well. It was crazy. I mean,
he performed it well vocally, but physically, you could tell, like, you know, whew. He was going through it, man. But, you know, he had a lot of health issues, and ultimately, you know, he ended up passing away. They say he passed away from a heart attack. And, of course, in the movie, they say that.
Yeah,
but, you know.
Like 3 different things, like a heart attack.
Yeah, they say he was killed. They say he overdosed.
So never really just said exactly what caused his death.
No, they did in the movie. They said a heart attack.
Yeah.
They said he passed of a heart attack in the movie.
A few other things.
No, they didn't. They said that in the movie, they said he passed of a heart attack. Outside of the movie, I've heard everything else but the heart attack. While doing these reactions and things of that nature, I've heard that he died from overdosing. Somebody, you know, intentionally drugged him to kill him. You know, all these other different conspiracies. But yeah, man, overall, I will say in the beginning, it was a bit choppy for me. I would have rather them, you know, made the movie a 3-hour movie just by going into detail about certain things. But I mean, overall, given the fact that he had the history that he had, they did a really good job of summing it all up.
They did.
For me to be able to digest and understand. Now, this wasn't a movie reaction, obviously. This is us just kind of reviewing and going over. I tried to play some of the trailer, but it kept dropping frames, so we had to stop. So, but yeah, anything else you want to say?
I'm saying overall, it you know, kept me interested from beginning to end. It's definitely a movie that you should go and check out and see if you haven't already.
I want to go watch it again.
Me too. I definitely want to go see it again.
Without the kids, because my daughter was getting on my nerves.
I was glad when they finally took a nap, because I was like, all right. I was tuned in the entire time.
I was trying to put Jaden to sleep so quick. I was rubbing his head just profusely, just.
It definitely, and then I think the beautiful part for me is, and I know y'all already stated that, you know, he was big on our community, and you get to see that throughout the movie, just like the love, you know, that he had. Yeah, you know,
the perception of Elvis from the black community and the millennial era, Gen Z. I mean, is that Elvis just stole black music. Now we just have to acknowledge that he went to these people and got permission to do these songs.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That he was also inspired. He was
definitely
more so inspired by them in the songs.
And he was in no way, shape, or form a songwriter. He never flexed and tried to be. He would go tell people, like, yo, I want to record that song.
Right.
Like, I want to record that. Like, I want to do that. You know what I'm saying? And, of course, people felt indifferent about it. You had, who was that Hank Snow guy, Elvis... Colonel asked if Elvis could record one of his songs. He was like, as long as he doesn't do the Elvis pelvis stuff while he's performing it. And he like, yeah, all right, you, whatever. He ended up, Hank tried to fire Elvis and ended up getting himself fired.
And I think one more thing that was kind of funny to me was the guy that, it was the group that was traveling with Elvis and them when they were on the road, and he went to start to comb his hair and change it to Elvis and try to dress like Elvis during his
that was funny. I don't know what that guy's name was,
but that was pretty funny.
But yeah, man, I can't wait for the movie to finally drop on DVD or DVD.
No, we don't need to do DVD.
I can't wait for it to drop, like, you know, Amazon for us to purchase, or you know, Max, like YouTube for us to be able to rent the movie. That way we can do a full movie reaction. It won't be our first time watching, but definitely Got to do a full movie reaction to that, man.
Yeah.
But any last thing you need to say?
No, that's it for me. I really enjoyed the movie, so that was it. And I just tell y'all to go out and support and, you know,
definitely
keep showing love, please.
But thank y'all for coming to Kicking in the Kingdom. If it's your first time, I know it won't be your last. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. But if you can smash that like button on your way out, that'll truly be appreciated. Y'all be safe, but go check on somebody today. You could be saving their life. Kingdom.